last battle of history, Roman versus Muslims. This chapter of history can never be forgotten. Against 200,000 Romans, there stood only 3,000 Muslims, and yet the Romans were weakened. How did this happen? Come, let us tell you the story from history.
The Battle of Muta took place in 629 CE, 8 AH. This was not a sudden or meaningless fight, but a necessary response to a serious international violation. Prophet Muhammad sent his envoy Harith bin Umayr al-Azda to deliver a diplomatic message to the governor of Busra. At that time, killing a diplomat was considered equivalent to declaring war throughout the world. When the Muslim envoy was on his mission, the Ghassani Arab governor Shurabil stopped him and killed him. Even the Romans, Byzantines themselves, generally did not kill envoys. Therefore, politically and logically, this was an act for which a response was unavoidable. Otherwise, in the future, the lives of Muslim envoys would not remain safe. In response to this incident, the Prophet prepared an army of 3,000 soldiers. At that time, it was the largest military expedition for the Muslims because it was the early period of Islam. The purpose of this mission was not to occupy any territory, but to defend international principles and make it clear that the killing of an envoy would not be tolerated. Knowing that the confrontation could be with the Roman army or their allies, the Prophet wisely appointed 3 commanders in order. First, Zayd bin Haritha, Ray. If he was martyred, then Jafar bin Abi Talib, R.A. And after him, Abdullah bin Rawaha, R.A. This decision was very wise so that there would be no gap in leadership during the battle. Before reaching the battlefield, the morale of the Muslims was already high. One major reason was that they had previously won battles in their tribal conflicts that seemed impossible to win. On one occasion, only 313 Muslims faced more than 1,000 warriors from another Makkan tribe, yet the Muslims were victorious. Similarly, another time 700 Muslims fought against 3,000 fighters and still achieved success. These victories continued to boost their morale. Most importantly, the Muslims showed such respect for the command of Prophet Muhammad that they were willing to sacrifice their lives. When the Muslim army approached Muta, they learned that the opposing force, which included Roman soldiers and their Ghassani Arab allies, was extremely large in number. Although historical reports vary, Muslim historians mention 280,000, and Roman historians mention 178,000. But according to reliable estimates, their number was around 200,000. This number was many times greater than the 3,000 Muslims, making the situation very difficult. When they reached the field and saw the Roman army, they were momentarily surprised, but mentally, they were strong enough not to fall into fear or weakness. It was as if their training and mental development had prepared them to remain steadfast in every situation. The Muslims adopted their strategy with great wisdom. They withdrew slightly from the open battlefield and positioned themselves between 2 mountains. Because of this location, although the Roman army attacked with great force, they could not use their entire army at once against the Muslims because there were mountains on all sides. Thus, the Muslims fought not only with passion and enthusiasm, but also with intelligence and strategy. The Romans were fully confident that since the Muslims were so few in number, victory would be in their hands. The Muslims continued to fight with spirit and faith, while the Romans treated the battle almost like a game. At the beginning, for quite some time, the Muslims fought with great bravery and inflicted heavy losses on the Romans. The Muslim losses were initially very small, but as time passed, the Romans began to take advantage of their large numbers. When their soldiers became tired, they retreated and fresh forces replaced them. In this way, the Romans maintained constant pressure. On the other hand, the Muslims were fewer in number, so they did not have the luxury of rotating tired soldiers. The first standard-bearer of the Muslims was Hazrat Zayd bin Harith, R.A. He fought with the greatest passion and enthusiasm. And since he was the leader, the rest of the Muslims followed him with even more courage and determination. His leadership gave the Muslim army tremendous spiritual strength. When Hazrat Zayd bin Harith was martyred, Hazrat Jafar bin Abi Talib took up the banner, as commanded by Prophet Muhammad. He too continued the fight with steadfastness and passion, and gave strength to the Muslims. Now leadership came to Hazrat Ja'far bin Abi Talib, R.A. His bravery and firmness were clear to everyone. When his right arm was cut off, he held the flag with his left hand. When the left arm was also cut off, he pressed the flag to his chest so that it would not fall to the ground. He received more than 90 wounds on his body, all of them from the front. This meant that he never turned his back. He always faced the enemy. His sacrifice further boosted the morale of the Muslims and became an eternal example of courage in history. Then leadership passed to Hazrat Abdullah bin Rawaha, R.A., and shortly afterward, he too was martyred. Thus, all the leaders named by Prophet Muhammad were martyred one after the other. At this critical moment, the army needed a commander skilled in military strategy. Everyone chose Hazrat Khalid bin Waleed. Hazrat Khalid bin Waleed adopted a remarkable strategy. He reorganized the ranks, changed positions, and employed such tactics that even after suffering losses, the Muslims continued to resist the Romans for a long time. The Roman army, seeing their own fallen soldiers in thousands while Muslim losses were in hundreds, began to realize that fighting the Muslims was more difficult than they had expected. This increased the confidence of the Muslims while decreasing the courage of the Romans, who began to accept their defeat and felt fear of the Muslims. And still the battle continued, and the Muslims killed 2 important Roman commanders as well. At this moment, Hazrat Khalid bin Waleed adopted a strategy that broke the morale of the Roman army. He secretly ordered 2 units to slip out during the battle and attack the Roman army's right flank from a mountain path. When the Romans saw 2 groups of Muslims suddenly approaching from the right, they thought that reinforcements had arrived, and that more Muslim troops had entered the battlefield. This further demoralized them. At this point, the Roman army scattered, and the Muslims were able to withdraw in an organized and honorable manner. In this battle, only between 300 and 400 Muslims were martyred. But the most notable point was that all 3 commanders were martyred one after the other. The martyrdom of all 3 commanders was proof that they fought with even more passion and dedication than the ordinary soldiers. They were not merely leading, they were sacrificing their own lives and showing that leadership does not mean only giving orders, but being the first to step forward. Their sacrifice greatly raised the morale of the remaining Muslims and became an everlasting example in history that leadership is tied to faith, sacrifice, and bravery. When the Muslim army returned, Prophet Muhammad gave Khalid bin Waleed the title, the Sword of Allah. When the people of Arabia heard that the Muslims had defeated the Romans, this event had a tremendous impact throughout the region.
This incident has been taken from the authentic books written by Roman and Muslim historians. We conducted deep research on this event and then presented it to you. We also used Google search for this, so that we could extract 100% accurate information about this incident. I hope you liked the first battle between the Romans and the Muslims.